So my character is named Scarsdale, and I am contracted to run security for this airline. And I am an special forces guy who, is called as sort of a crisis manager when this plane has gone down and that they can't locate it. So I come in and track the plane and when we realize that the plane has in fact, crash landed on an island, I have to send in a team of my sort of ex-special forces soldiers to go in and try and rescue whoever might be surviving from this plane crash. I was really pleasantly surprised. The script is really entertaining. It's in some sense it's a type of film that we're familiar with, which is very satisfying, but it's also really smart and full of surprises and kind of has you on the edge of your seat. I mean, I read it in one sitting, I couldn't put it down. After I directed my first film, my understanding of what my role was as an actor on a film completely transformed, because I realized there were so many parts of the filmmaking process that I didn't understand. At the same time, when I started directing and then after a while producing, my experience as an actor was just so incredibly helpful, to the whole process of storytelling. And I realized that I knew a lot of things that, directors and producers who don't come from an acting background just don't understand. So the jobs really complement each other. I've always been fascinated with, extra governmental security operations. Some people call them mercenaries, contract soldiers. I sort of realized, after the wars that we've been through in the Middle East, so many Americans were private contractors. There's some very, very successful companies that no one's ever heard of that do a lot of work for the US government, for the CIA, and, are able to operate, and for major corporations around the world. So I read a lot about that already. I'd been working on a project a few years ago that we were developing that involved that kind of an outfit. So when I was asked to play Scarsdale, I felt I'd already done a lot of reading, and I thought, I think I see where this guy, fits. I had an understanding of what his job and what his realm of expertise might be. So, I guess I probably went back and looked at some of the reference material that I already possessed, but it had been an area that I'd already explored, pretty thoroughly. Yeah, the design is hugely important. I mean, that creates the environment that we get to work in. And one of the really fun things about working on film is you have a three-dimensional environment most times. When you work on stage, there's two dimensions to it, and then there's the audience. So you have to kind of create the fourth wall for yourself, whereas in a movie that exists. This set was very imaginative and felt very realistic. It was also cool because we could react to something real in terms of the video footage that we would otherwise have been imagining of what, there's this video conferencing that we're doing with our operatives in the jungle. It was great because they were projecting those onto a screen for us so we could react in real time, which doesn't always happen. Often it's like a green screen and you just have to imagine it in post. But I think they created this set where it all felt very, very real. So that's always a gift. So many movies that we watch now, people watch at home, but this is a film that you want to see with other people. It's a big kind of thrilling entertainment, and there's lots of surprises and twists and turns, and there's just nothing to replace that communal experience of the sensory experience of watching it on a big screen and the communal experience of sharing this with, X hundred other people. It's just with a tub of popcorn in your lap. I was familiar with the genre, of a plane that crashes in the jungle and the heroic captain who all seems lost. And so you feel like you know where it's going, but there was a sense of authenticity to it that made me, kept me on the edge of my seat, and it kept surprising me. Even though I sort of felt like I knew where it was probably going to go, it was constantly surprising me and done with real intelligence. So I'm excited for audiences to have that experience, because to me that always makes the best commercial movies, or ones that satisfy those appetites of why we want to go see an action movie, but honor our intelligence, where we don't feel talked down to, and challenge us and surprise us.
All action films aren't the same, or at least they shouldn't be. And this felt like it had a heart to it. And I read it, and I really thought that it's going to depend a lot on the chemistry between the two characters of Torrance and Gaspar. So, and I know Jerry's work as an actor, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to sort of come up with something that could actually be a very fun project and a very fun movie. I play Gaspar, who is a guy who's being extradited extradited to Canada, and he's coming on the plane, and no one knows what he did per se. It's said that he did something, that he killed someone. That's what he's been accused of. The character is basically being brought in a stand trial for something he did many years ago. So he's a very mysterious character, and essentially he's supposed to be brought to stand trial, and him being dangerous, he sits at the back of the plane away from the other passengers in handcuffs, but very discreet. He's not wearing anything. He's not in prison garb or anything like that. And there's a person assigned to him to make sure he stays out of the way. And of course, when the plane crashes, then they have a problem on their hands, because the security guy died in the plane crash, and my guy survived. So now they have something to deal with. I thought it was a great opportunity to get a chance to work with Jerry. I think he's been around doing these kind of films, or films of this nature, for a while. He's always had a good knack for comedy, romance, and things of that nature. But this action genre for him is really a sweet spot. And I think having him play the captain and playing a guy I don't think he's played before, someone who's in a sense outmatched in the film, in over his head, someone who didn't expect this to happen. Most of his characters are meeting danger head on, and very prepared for it. In this case, he wasn't. And so that's where my character comes in, a reluctant guy who does have a certain a certain set of skills, as they say, but reluctant to use them because he's more selfish. He's trying to, look out for himself. And so this is where the two things sort of work out in terms of his motivation, Jerry's motivation, his character, to help his crew and his cabin of passengers, and my sort of reluctant nature, but finding connection with his character and his passion for wanting to save these people, and that sort of bond sort of happens quickly, and it sort of develops throughout the film. Initially, when Torrance and Gaspar break away from the group, their main objective is to find a way to communicate and to talk to the airline, and just to find out how to get in contact with them so they can disclose where they are, tell everyone their location, try to get help, try to get rescuers. What they find is that they're really in a hostile environment. Their lives are at stake, because they basically find evidence that people have been tortured and killed, and they're dealing with people who are not kind, and it turns up the tension, because ultimately, my character, Gaspar, has been in this kind of situation before, wartime, dealing with insurgents, people who have weapons, and people who will kill you and don't have don't care, and will do it in a moment's notice. But Torrance's character being the hero that he really is underneath it all, being the quote unquote madman that he really is underneath this exterior of this sort of casual run of the mill pilot. He was determined to save his passengers, because it was like an obligation. I could just leave, it doesn't behoove me to stick around. I don't know these people, nor should I care particularly. And my priority should just be getting myself some freedom. At this point, I could sort of pick freedom at any moment, and I stick with this character of Torrance throughout the journey, trying to make sure that he's okay, and to make sure that he gets back to his family, because I know he has one. So I sort of I have concern, and I have an investment in his character, and by default, I have an investment in the passengers, and I see that it's necessary that I try to help him. Challenges in terms of Puerto Rico and what it's given to us, and the challenges are gifts in some ways. I mean, the heat, the elements, the unforgiving sun. I mean, many days we were out shooting on location, and we were in the low 100s. That's with the humidity. I mean, the humidity is just unbelievable. We were supposed to be in the Philippines, obviously, and this is substituting for the Philippines. And the one time that I was in the Philippines, I remember the humidity, and I remember that it was August, and I remember the heat. It was so strong, and it was like pea soup outside. You could feel it. You could feel it in the air. But yeah, I think Puerto Rico has been really great in helping us with this film and giving it a feel that we were so desperately looking for. And we had options, but I think Puerto Rico's been the perfect location for us.
I play Samuel Daly, who's the co-pilot to Captain Torrance, who's played by Gerard Butler. Daly and Torrance are essentially one of the last flights of Trailblazer 119, the New Year's crew. But throughout the journey, they unexpectedly encounter a very, very bad, very, very turbulent thunderstorm, and essentially comes across Yolo Island, and everything, Murphy's Law starts playing out. Everything that can go wrong goes wrong. I really connected to the intensity of the scenes that were sent to me between Torrance and Daly. And not only were there technicalities that they had to face, they also had to keep their cool within this, heightened reality, life or death situation. And this whole movie, everyone has to work together in order to survive. Brody Torrance is played by the wonderful Gerard Butler. I've been a huge fan of Jerry ever since I was a kid. Believe it or not, one of my favorite movies when I was 15 was Phantom of the Opera. And of course, then eventually 300. So growing up watching his movies, Rock and Roller as well, getting to be here, working with him, it's kind of surreal. But at the same time, I was a fan of his film, but now I'm actually more of a fan of him as a person. He's just such a nice dude, man. Jerry is first and foremost, he's an action star. He's done a lot more action movies than I have. And he's also had 30 years of experience under his belt. So the instinct of being in such heightened scenes is that you always just want to go, almost like you're hyperventilating, being scared. But in reality, though, what I learned is that in actual fact, people would want to stay as calm and collected as possible. And sometimes that stillness plays a very important role in that. And that's something I learned from Jerry. And it's just getting to see how he gets into his process of his characters when, the scenes are at quite a heightened level. It's been really thrilling to watch because I've watched a lot of his movies, and getting to see that process itself has been kind of a very surreal experience. Well, I believe it's important for films, to have an accurate reflection and representation of our day-to-day lives, because it plants the seeds into audience subconscious when they watch this, because media has such a powerful impact in our lives. And the thing with playing, we do exactly that. We strive to do that. With Trailblazer 119 taking off from Changi Airport, you're going to have a diverse group of people on board of the flight, and our passengers and our crew members reflect exactly that. The one challenge of being in Puerto Rico is the heat. It's not something I'm used to. I mean, being from New Zealand, actually right now is peak winter in New Zealand. So coming from the cold to Puerto Rican heat, it's something else. It took a little while to adjust. Being out in Sabah, filming in Sabah, it was tough because there were no shades. There were really no shades. The only shades we had was under the plane. He essentially creates the atmosphere of the scene. Lighting is so important. It can it can change the mood of the frame of a scene. It can be dark, it can be bright. This is talking both, literally and emotionally, and that all comes within the way we light things. And Brandon is a master at that. So getting to work with him, seeing the way he lights every scene, it's been an honor. He also makes us look pretty. Jean-Francois Richet is the director of The Plane. He's just so fun to work with because the energy he brings to every scene, the excitement that he brings, you feel it. You can feel this man's passion, and because you feel his passion, you reciprocate into each scene. And it's just, we build upon one another, and everyone can feel that. He really is just like a little kid having the time of his life, and that's a compliment, because there's no ego about him. He just wants to make the best film possible, and we all feel that. So it trickles down. We all just want to make the best film possible, and we're very lucky to be working with Jean-Francois. Oh my God, I feel like the physicality of the movie just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger by each scene. It starts off with being pretty chill, pretty calm in the cockpit. You're sitting down, everyone is sitting down, waiting to fly this plane, and before you know it, we're all in panic. We're all just trying to stay on our seats because the turbulence through the storm is just so big. But once we land, we're fighting for our lives in this foreign land with so many unexpected things happening. Like, it looks violent, like the gimbal on the plane looks violent. It is violent, but I loved it. I loved it. I love theme parks. So I had a really, really fun time being on that thing. Every time we hit a turbulence, it really just added to our performance because we didn't have to act. We were really being thrown around. Luckily, we were strapped on, so it was all safe. But yeah, all the turbulence and all the up and down movements, it was all real. There was not much acting. It was really like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Am I going to be thrown out of my seat? Thankfully, I was fine. Okay, what you need to do, use the bathroom beforehand because you do not want to miss anything in this movie. It's going to have you gripping to the edge of your seat, all right? It's action-packed, there's heightened intensity, and it's a lot about it.
He's a mercenary. He has special operations experience. The assumption is that he was in Air Force Special Forces. He was a PJ. So those guys, essentially, when a plane crashes or there's a mission where other special operations operators are pinned down or seriously injured, these guys jump in and provide tactical care, medical care to the down pilot or the wounded. Just the connecting point of him being a battle-hardened warrior and with no fear and willing to be the one who raises his hand and says, this situation seems a bit crazy. The odds are stacked against us, but I know that we could somehow pull it off. I'm willing to put my life on the line to go rescue these people. And so that also resonated with me. And that was one of the reasons why I went into the military. After what happened 9/11, I just felt, I grew up in New York City in the Bronx. And so I watched the Twin Towers come down. And so, watching on the top of the roof of my building, seeing the towers come down and seeing, and just hearing the reports of so many people being killed and knowing people who were killed in the Twin Towers, I just felt helpless and I felt like I needed to do something. And that's when I essentially joined the military about 8 months later. And so this idea of raising your hand and saying, you know what, I'm going to jump into a profession that could very well end my life, but I'm going to do it anyway. That essentially resonated with me as it relates to the character, him raising his hand to jump into this dire situation where, as I said earlier, the odds were and are completely stacked against him. He doesn't have any tactical experience, but he's a man with passion, and he's a man on a mission. His plane unfortunately ends up in this bad situation, and he has these passengers that he has to care for, and he's going to go above and beyond to protect his passengers and get them home. We have this saying that you got the scalpel and you got the hammer, where we're just a scalpel, we're precision, right? Because we have this training and this expertise. Where on the other hand, Brody Torrance is the hammer, right? So he's just where he's just gonna get messy and just if he has to beat a guy down or whatever, he's just gonna do it because he has that passion, he has that motivation, and he's working through motivation, whereas we're working through experience. I found Jerry as team leader to be a great coach. In every sports team, you got to have a good coach in order for the team to be successful, and he knows when to be light and joke around and pop his head in, but then he also knows when to be firm, and that's one thing I love about him. I brought my kids on set the other day, last week actually, and he was just so sweet with them and so graceful with them, and he did his voice from the How to Train Your Dragon, the character that he plays with my kids. My kids just lit up, But again, he brings that lightness. He knows when to bring that lightness. He knows when to bring that grace, but then he knows when to, hey, it's time to get to work. It's time to get the job done. And I think all of us as actors on the set, from all of the passengers to the mercs to even the bad guys, we all respect that about him, and we all enjoy that because we know when we come to set, we're going to get his best, and because we're going to get his best, we're going to give our best, and that's part of being a good coach. I think the biggest thing I'll take away from this experience is the power of collaboration. From the top to the bottom. And how it's good to find and work on projects where you're working with people who are collaborative. Gerard Butler has been extremely collaborative. The producers have been extremely collaborative. Jean-Francois, the director, who's an amazing director, he's been doing an amazing job. He's been extremely collaborative and receptive. There was one scene in particular where Jean-Francois was like, I want you to, when you shoot, I want you to shoot the guy 3 times. And I was like, but in reality, if I wanted to be an accurate shot, and I said, hey, Jean-Francois, I'll do exactly what you want me to do, but can I get my opinion on this? He's like, absolutely, I want to hear what you have to say. That's why I brought you here. And I was like, in reality, if I'm gonna take a precision shot, and if I really need to focus in and dial in, I'm not gonna shoot 3 shots rapidly. I'm gonna just shoot 1 shot. I'm gonna slow down, slow my breathing, get set, calm down on my trigger pull, and I'm gonna take that 1 shot, headshot, take him out, and do that. You do that. He said, yes, I love it, and we did that, and it looked great, and it played so well on camera, and so but that goes back to collaboration.
Trailblazer it is an identity, right? We had to create the logo design. We have to create the whole corporation kind of look. Because it is at sometime in between the movie, we start seeing a lot of the actual company in the boardroom and the situation room. Then we have to start, creating that corporate idea of what it's going to look like. And we do have graphic designers. We obviously do a lot of research, and all of the designs and ideas go through clearance so that we make sure that we're not doing anything that already exists. It was complicated, and it's very technical in a way, and also we had to accommodate for spaces, and we created a combination of 2 models. We did the MD-80 and we combined it with the A320 so that we didn't have, first of all, we didn't have any copyright issues for any particular models, but also because we wanted it to be a little bit bigger in some areas, and we wanted to just take the license of moving things around and to make it work to what we had available. So yeah, usually I want to start by saying that you usually get mock-ups that are a certain size, and we couldn't find anything bigger than 30 feet, 40 feet. We needed a whole plane because Jean-Francois really wanted to have that shot from the cockpit all the way to the tail. And in order to do that, we needed a whole plane stripped and then rebuilt the interior in a stage so that we could put it on a hinge. It could be moved, and then on a gimbal so it could be also manipulated upward and back and stuff like that. So imagine turning a landing strip into a jungle. This is supposed to be just a plane in the middle of the jungle. So we had to dump I think it was about 80 trucks of dirt. We covered 1,500 feet by 200 feet wide. I mean, this was gymongous area of dirt, and then put greens around, walls of greens, so it felt like we were surrounding it as much as possible. And it wasn't until we did that scout that we realized, yeah, oh my God, we need so much more. This has to be so much bigger. The plane needs to move around. It needs to turn within this area, you know. So there were so many things we need to take under consideration. It's like, how do we compact the dirt so that the plane can actually move easily without having any problems? How do we make sure that, you know, we had puddles of water, so every time that we had to fill this in, it was just like using the heavy equipment every Sunday to patch it up again for the next week of shoot. We had to create 2 roads within the trees that we had in the area, the actual, you know, the existing trees, and they had to be more than 200 feet long. So it was just like creating this whole environment that didn't exist. When Gerard Butler first came into like the first set, one of the first sets that we did was a compound. And you could tell that he felt very comfortable right away. It's like, okay, this is how I imagined it. This is how I felt it would be. And it does help the actor just get into the action and just feel like, you know, this is how it's going to play. And I think it's been pretty much the same with all the other sets. I mean, when he was at the airport, we did Chani Airport. He felt very comfortable in the space. Same with the plane, just, you know, totally relate to what's around him, how it works. So, you know, it was a really pleasant way of seeing your work fulfilled and just helping, you know, the actors just do their job properly and look great in general.
I play Katie. Katie and my friend Bree, and we're traveling together on our way home from a vacation, and yeah, then we get on this plane, which we wish we wouldn't have. Actually, I think this has been the perfect, you know, I couldn't dream of a better first experience because I'm in I've been here on set for 2 months now, and I get to see how everything works. When I don't have dialogue myself, I get to see and observe, you know, when Jerry's doing his scenes or when someone else is doing, and I learn and I like to take in everything, and it's like almost being in school for acting. I do feel like Katie and Torrance, I almost feel like Katie represents not all the passengers, but maybe what the passengers mean to Torrance. And also, I think he sees his daughter in me. So we have a lot of moments where I come to him for to feel safety and to feel hope that he's going to get us home. And I think he sees, you know, when he hears me and sees me, it reminds him of his daughter. And I think I give him some kind of extra push to, you know, some fire in him to, you know, I'm going to save these passengers. I'm going to save myself. I need to get home to my daughter, something like that. And then we have there's a beautiful story throughout the movie of us, and we have our moments in the movie.
It's New Year's Eve, and we're on a flight, and we get into the storm, and the pilot loses connection to every single cell tower, and that he has no idea where we are, and we have to land on an island that is one of the most dangerous places on Earth. And then the story unfolds from there, and there are a lot of challenges we have to face and how our pilot tries to guide us. So I play Bree, and she's on a trip with her best friend Katie, and I think this is the first trip they really take together and the first time they're not together with their family, and I think they really represent the innocence, and they really remind Torrance of his family and of his daughter, and I think that's one of the characters that really motivate him to get us all home and get us safe, because we're more afraid and we're more terrified, and we have never been confronted with a fear like that. And I think seeing our kind of raw emotions and what we're going through really gets him to try to see the humanity in all of it and really try to get home also to his family. So Gerard Butler played Torrance, and What I loved about working with him is he's so committed, he's so dedicated. Every day he shows up, and even though it was a really tough shoot, he never really complained at all. He was always prepared, knew his text, knew exactly with what he was going into it, knew everyone's names, was very sweet to everyone on set, and really tried to have a conversation with all of us. And I think his work ethic really inspired all of us to really show up every day and give it our best. The thing about Jerry is he was such a committed and such a great and talented actor, but at the same time, he was the most hands-on producer you can imagine. Like you said, handing out water, making sure for every scene we had enough sweat so it was really realistic and fit together with a plot. And just by really getting us all to connect, to talk, to see if we're doing okay, to see if the circumstances, if someone needs something. Like vitamin C was handed out a lot just because of the heat and the humidity. And his care for the other people and the care for the project really translates into the love into the movie, which makes it so successful. Working with the ensemble for so long is one of the things I love about acting, because you go to a project, you don't really know anyone, and within a week they all kind of become like family. And we were a pretty big group. I think in the tent and acting together we were like always 15 people. And after spending 3 months together, you get really used to each other. And I have this every time I leave set. You get very sad because you miss seeing those people around every day. Even on our days off, we would do things together, go to the national park. And it just very quickly becomes a very familiar environment where everyone is very interested in getting to know each other. We play games, we talk, we learn from each other, we exchange books. And it became this wonderful community in a way. And then the suffering, even sometimes, or waiting for hours on end, suddenly becomes enjoyable because you get to spend time with these people. So it was definitely a wonderful experience to have this community for such a long time. Daniela has a humor that is incomparable. She's hilarious. She's also so talented, and I think the way she could joke in between takes and then be completely in the role while the camera was rolling is an incredible talent. And she really also interacted with all of us, always had a good mood. She was very funny. She came with her flip-flops and pillows if we had a 5 a.m. call time. She just made everything very humane. And similar to Jerry, like, they're very well-known and talented people, but they're so grounded and so interested in the people around them that it's an honor to learn from them and just see them work. He plays this very secluded, mysterious person, and I think very quickly at the beginning of the movie we find out that somehow he can be dangerous. And I think that also adds to the tension between the passengers before even the plane crash, that we're all very tense of what did this guy do and what is he capable of. And then also his reactions to the entire plane crash, he was a lot calmer than any of us were. And I think his mysteriousness and his unpredictability adds more tension between the passengers even before we face more challenges. And it adds an interesting dynamic of this push and pull of, oh, he's helping, is he really helping, what is his motivation? And he adds a lot of the internal conflict that we all have already, and then adds to the external by then, oh, he leaves with our captain. What is he up to? So there's so many questions that arise from his character that add to the tension of the movie. I think Bree and Katie play a significant role in Captain Brody's consciousness of trying to get us out of there. A lot of the times we're the characters who are very helpless and just don't know what is going on, and we're very afraid of dying, and we make that very apparent to him. And I think the other characters show more strength or don't show that weakness to the other passengers, or especially the captain, but by us being so unexperienced and being so afraid and being so helpless and asking Torrance for almost fatherly advice, he feels very responsible to get us out of there and to give us hope. And I think him giving us that hope continuously inspires him and gives him more strength to go through that. Jim Churchman made sure that everything we did was safe, and that was his priority. And before any dangerous situation involving guns or involving possible risks or where they were manhandling us, he talked to all of us, asked if we were okay with it, if we had any injuries. And just by telling us what was going to happen and ensuring that we were all on the same page, it was a very safe environment. For example, there's one scene in the bus where there's a very big shake and a violent shake. And if we wouldn't have known that, I think a couple of us would have actually flown up in the air. But just by knowing what is coming and knowing what to expect, he always made sure that we were ready. There's a lot of physicality in this entire movie. I mean, most of it is us being afraid, running away, trying to find an answer, trying to find a solution. And then the gimbal was the second part of the shoot, and you hear so much about it. And there's so many rumors going around of how bad it is, and people telling you that have been on it that it's like so terrifying and you're gonna puke, so you shouldn't eat. So I was ready for the worst, and I got on the gimbal and I was like, okay, whatever's gonna come, we're ready. And then I got on there and I was like, oh, this is actually not too bad. And it was great because if you have this expectation and it is not that, everything you get is great. And it was not us being like tossed around and actually hurting ourselves that much. So I was like, oh, this is okay. But it was definitely very physical in the way that I think for 8 or 9 hours a day, we were on that, being shaken around and then doing that again and being tossed forwards or backwards. And I think just doing that for such an extended period of time wears you out a bit. And that's the part where you have to be like, I need to bring the same energy every time. Jean-François was our director, and he was very hands-on. So he knew exactly what he wanted every take and every motive to be. So he would like test it out with his phone and with his hands and would come up to us and test different angles and see how he could, for example, walk through it quickly or like have all these different ideas that I never saw before in filmmaking, where it was very much not a static camera, but a moving camera. It would shift from perspective to perspective. It would run around. It would turn to really show the chaos we were in and that we were feeling. And I loved that approach. Like he had very original ideas and really helped us to just completely trust him in the process, and I think that turned out really well. And I used to never have a problem with flying, and it's so funny. I flew to Puerto Rico to do this movie, and I read the script again, and it was kind of shaky. And I was like, oh, this is not a good sign. And then I was like, okay, this is fine. I'm doing a movie about it. And I believe sometimes in like manifestation, I was like, oh God, this is horrible. And that was like the first time I was actually afraid of flying. It's like, okay, I'll be fine. So I arrived, and on my way back, we had actually got into a storm because there were some hurricanes going on, and the plane was shaking violently. And I was like, oh God, so now I'm gonna die on my way back after doing like a movie about a plane crash. And suddenly it really got into my head because you were in that mindset for so long, and I used to never be afraid of flying. And it slowly faded away again, but I have to say it stuck with me for a bit. Generally, every actor puts so much love and care into every movie and every character they play. And I think one of the biggest pleasures is to see it all come together, no matter what you do in that movie, but just seeing your creative work being put to screen and being like all polished and beautiful in this package. And we put so much work into it and so much of our time for 3 months. And I think the thing I'm most excited about is just seeing it all come together with the music, with the green screen, with like all our actions and all the scenes just being finally wrapped up in the movie. I just can't wait to see it because there were so many moments and so many different moments. And over that entire time, you kind of forget about all the individual ones. And then seeing how they all unfold in that story together is going to be incredible to see. There's just a difference if you see a movie in a theater or at home. Like I noticed that myself. The sound is different. The expressions you see is different. The way you feel with the characters, because you're completely undistracted in like this dark room. You have the sound all around you. You have this huge screen with all the expressions. It just really gets you connected to the story differently, and you don't have the same experience at home. And I think with everything that happens in that movie, and it's so rich in action, you really want to see all of it unfold and be part of that experience. And the sound and the magnitude of seeing it on the big screen really changes your perception of the film. And that's why I'm so glad it's going to be a theatrical release. When I read the script, there were so many shifts in it that I didn't expect, where I was like, this script is so rich. There's so much happening and so many turns and twists that I would have never seen coming. And I love that about movies when it's not, oh, this is going to be the end. But there's so many moments where the fate of all the characters changes continuously and unexpected things arise that like no audience member would expect. And when you think it was bad, it's gonna get worse, and then it's gonna get better. And the movie has so much of that that I think it's gonna be very surprising for the audience that, oh, this is not just a plane crash movie. There's so much more to it, and the actual story unfolds after the crash.
The plane is about a commercial airline that crash lands in an island in the Philippines, and Gerard Butler, the pilot of this commercial airline, needs to figure out how he's going to get his passengers safely off the island before they all get killed by a bunch of pirates. You know, the film came to me the way all of them do, through my agents, but I read the script and I had a heads up on what their vision was. I really adored the director, and I was a huge Gerard Butler fan, so it seemed like something I hadn't done before. Also, Bonnie was a character who was really strong but sweet, and like it was not the type of character that I've gotten to portray before. So it was a good fit. Plane, what was so cool about shooting it was that it felt like a 90s action film. And I think the distinction is that, you know, there's tons of action movies that get made, but we all know the ones from the 90s are the best because they're cinematic. And this movie is cinematic. It's not just a digital throwaway, like there's artistry, everyone wanted to feel real and raw. Like it's definitely going to be a standout film for that reason. So I played the head flight attendant, Bonnie, who oversees all the passengers, the safety of the passengers, and when the time comes where we have to crash land, I don't think that's something she's ever had to do before. So it was fun to play Bonnie because she was definitely like the mother or the mother hen of everyone on the film. It was very apparent, even on the first day, how much he cares. Like, yes, he's a producer. Yes, he's the main character, but he cares deeply about things being realistic and people bringing their best. And he, you know, he's got a lot of passion and a lot of Monster Energy drink running through his veins. And he is a machine, I'll tell you what. But he wants it to be good at the end of the day. And he's so committed. I mean, he's committed at a 12, so everybody else better bring their A game. And it kept our production going. Evan Dane Taylor plays Junmar, the head pirate, who's the villain, the ultimate villain in our movie. And that is a testament to what a good actor he is, because off camera, he is a little lovable man, like kind and sweet and giggly and sensitive and like lovely to be around. And then he turns it on and he's evil and your worst nightmare and makes our lives a living hell in the movie. But none of those things. I mean, just like incredible. Like as soon as camera's on, he's a different human being. He was fantastic. It was the perfect backdrop. I mean, the movie's supposed to be set in the Philippines, but where we shot, you know, we shot on that tarmac and it was hot. And you really felt like the stakes were high because it was, you know, it was challenging, it was really rewarding, but man, that weather was like, it was real. Yeah. This movie required, you couldn't be out of shape and shoot this movie or you're gonna get hurt. Again, they want everything to look realistic and have there be real panic. And I don't know how much running and jumping and things that we did. And if you want it to look real, you can't fake that. You gotta really like run at a 10, and and also like when they're like I think the pirates are hitting us on the way into, you know, it was like it was real. It was like the stakes were really high, and coupled with the heat, you know, it's one of those things where it's not until you're done and you're headed back home where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe we did all that. That was crazy, exhausting, and demanding. But I think at the end of the day, it's gonna speak for itself. Like none of it looks make believe. It has a very real feel to it. You know, there was a lot of portraying dangerous things with shooting, with gimbals, but Jim Churchman, our head stunt coordinator, he's a pro. So, you know, he puts safety first. How are we going to portray the most realistic action and do it in the safest way? And so I always felt like I was in good hands. And, you know, and also Jim's very communicative. Like, are you comfortable with this? Do you want to do this? You don't have to do this. If you don't want to do this, we can figure out another way. So there was a lot of options. You know, Jim's very talented and he's very good at what he does. That's why he does all the big projects. So we were definitely in the hands of a pro. Number one on the call sheet, oftentimes, more than not, they set the tone for the entire film. And one of the reasons why I agreed to do the movie is because Jerry has such an outstanding reputation. Everyone says he's nice, and he was all of those things that I had heard about. And, you know, not all movies are like that. Not all number one on the call sheet are like that. In fact, if you do encounter someone who's warm and gregarious when the camera turns off, consider yourself very lucky. And Jerry is one of those people. He wants you to do your best, and he also wants you to have fun, because you're not going to make anything good if you're not having fun. And I think that he gets that. Jean-Francois Richet, whose films I had seen, I knew that this was going to be very special. One, because he's French, and like, let's be honest, the French are some of the best filmmakers alive. They want things to look beautiful and look good. Yes, it's about the action and portraying that part of it, but how do we do it in the most cinematic and the most beautiful way? Like, their use of like even the dust when we shot on the tarmac, and there's all that dust, and there's like all these shots of like the mercenaries coming off the plane, and it looks grand and incredible, and he was just so good at capturing that. You would look at something and you'd be like, I don't really get it, and then he would figure something out, and you'd look at the monitor and you'd be like, oh, this guy's a genius. Like, clearly he knows what he's doing. Every character in, that's written in Plane could be anybody. Well, back in the day, anybody was just white people, and I think it was really important for Jerry and producers to reflect life. Also, this is a flight coming from Asia back to the United States. So, Bonnie in particular, Bonnie's just a head flight attendant. Well, now Bonnie's me, and that goes for the rest of the passengers. And I think that was, I know that was really important, and it was also really important to, hire a lot of locals. So, you have a lot of Latino actors in this cast, which is wonderful. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's a more accurate reflection of life. And I think that, that was a goal for Jerry. I'm of the personal belief that every film should be seen in a theater. I mean, that's like why we make movies. We're meant to be in a theater sharing an experience, a vulnerable experience with total strangers looking at something. And this movie in particular, because it is like a 90s throwback feeling action film, it takes you back to the 90s when we used to go to theaters, and that was how we spent our Friday and Saturday nights. And like, that's what we did. That's what I grew up doing. And this is that kind of movie. Like, this is why you go to the theater, to be with strangers in a dark room, and you're all on a plane that's going down, and it's totally like adrenaline rush, and it's fun, and this is like, it's just like the best experience. I mean, it's like why I went into this business at all. So get off your streaming and go see it in theaters.
It's like a classical action movie, and the important thing was the characters driving the action. So we really care about characters, because for me, Jerry, it's like a real working class heroes. When we see his movie, you suffer with him, So, and I like working class hero. My goal is to be realistic. It's a movie, but to be realistic. So, the plane start in Shanghai. Why all the passengers will be American? No sense. You have English, Korean, Chinese, Swedish. You have all the nationality. Because this movie is not just for the American market. It's for everybody. I think it's when you see the characters with a sweat, it's a real. It's not fake. We don't put water on them just before the shot. So it was real. And when they are tired and exhausted, it's real too. So it was very interesting for this story. You have to take the difficulty and transform in energy, transform in a good things for the movie. You cannot fight against that. So you have to play with it. I will say Jerry is not just a producer. He is Jerry. When, for example, he cares always, every day, for the most important thing we have to keep in mind, the motivation of each character. So, is it an actor job? Is it a producer job? I don't know. I don't know which part it is. because Jerry was involved everywhere. First to choose me too, but every day on the set we took the script, we read the thing, and it's okay, what is the motivation for him? What is for the most important thing? When you know the motivation, you know, I think it's more important than camera movement, light. It's motivation, because audience care about characters. The characters tells the story. I need a gimbal, and it's expensive, a gimbal. It's very expensive, and we have many weeks with a gimbal. We have to bring from US, but I don't know exactly where, and we have only few companies with it. So yes, we need a gimbal. The plane will be inside a storm. You have to be with them. You have to be scared with them. You have to scream with them. So they bring the gimbal. The theater is better than a TV. You know, it's a real experience for the sound, for the, you know, it's large. And for the experience, I think, we don't have, like, and I think I will not say it's a prototype, this movie, but I cannot remember to saw a movie like that. Usually, I will say a plane movie, because it's not a plane movie, but I will say the most important part is the crash, the storm. But on our movie, this is the beginning. You know? So when, for example, we saw all the storm stuff, all the storm scenes, it's like ending, you know? But no. You will have one more hour after that, and you will see what's happened for characters, because the most important, what I said, is characters. So yes, I start the movie, I will say, when the other finish the movie.
Reading the script and breaking it down starts the kind of creative process of getting some ideas, but then it really has to take shape, meeting the director and discussing what his vision is and trying to serve that. In this instance, Jean-Francois is shooting it in a pretty different way. It's not standard Hollywood. It's not close inserts on every little piece. It's a lot of running long scenes and trying to get it all to come together. It's been, honestly, our first 2 days of shooting were this massive fight with Gerard and a heavy in this cobalt mine. And we put together a little fight and shot it, and it was about a 2-minute fight. And that turned into one take. Let's do the whole fight in one take with our lead actor, smashing into walls, flipping over desks, a real gritty, like he's not a trained fighter in the film, so he's just a normal guy trying to survive. And Gerard just stepped up. I mean, I don't know what other actors we could do that with, but Gerard was all in. And I think the outcome is going to be really cool. To watch him work is impressive just because every take is good. It's like I've never seen him do a bad take. With the fight specifically, we had, like I said, the 2-minute thing. So there were things that went wrong in the first couple attempts, but they had nothing to do with Gerard. He was 100% on all the time. But beyond the physicality of it, his acting is, I mean, look, that's why he is who he is, because he's obviously good at what he does. But it's something to see it on the screen, but it's something else to witness it in person. So I'm really happy to have gotten to know him a little bit. Gerard's going to make sure that he's being represented in the best possible way, and I think he's got a really good handle on that. He's got just an instinct that helps tie the story together. And as far as a creating producer, I think he excels at it. And, there might be those moments you say, well, hey, this is taking a long time. But then by the end of it, you're like, it's better. It's worth it. The man knows what he's talking about. It's an illusion that we create I would say on this movie, we've put some of the actors in spots. We've pushed on that. Beyond Gerard in the fight was Oliver did a lot of his stuff getting shoved to the ground. Mike Coulter is killing people. He was in a truck driving into the woods, you know, crashing through trees. And every one of them stepped up. And I think they've had fun doing it, I hope. But it's been a treat that way too. Like, but it's a balance. We have to be educated about it. I wouldn't put them where I believe they could actually get hurt. Yeah, I've enjoyed that process. I want them to think that everything we did looked like it could really happen, but still be impactful enough to affect them. And that's kind of what this story wants, kind of what it deserves. And so if that's it, if they think everything we did might have happened, then I think we did our job.
The jungle was a set that was required, and obviously there's jungle in Puerto Rico, which is one of the reasons we were there. And you know, it's about finding the right piece of jungle that works for the film, that we can get access to it, because there's no point in finding a piece that's at the top of the hill that it takes you 2 days to get there. But once you find the right place, and that to me is the key thing. If you find the right location, then that answers a lot of other questions for you. You know, when you look at the final film, that all happens in the one day. If anybody cares to look at the weather during that one day, it changes drastically through the day. So my job is not about waiting till everything is either sunny or everything is overcast. It's about knowing that that's good enough to get away with, because if we don't shoot it now, we lose the shot. Now, I think, you know, I can see inconsistencies in some of the weather, but I don't think if you're in the story, anybody's paying attention to it. The first approach, shaking the camera and leaving a fuselage of the aircraft on the ground, nobody would believe any of that. Why would anybody choose to do something that is never going to be believed by anybody? So that's never an option. So the gimbal was always, to me, the only way you could do this stuff. There's things happening with the gimbal too that, again, no disrespect to any actor, but you know, if you're faking movement, it's a lot different than when it happens to you and you don't know that it's going to happen. You react differently, and it makes it much easier for actors, I think, to give a believable performance because they're physically being shaken. Some of the shots, I had to do one running backwards from the end of the aircraft into the cockpit, running backwards, handheld, with the mercenaries charging full blast at me. I hit a lot of seats like that because it was like that. That's not something, but it brings with it the realness that you do believe. And you know, sometimes when the aircraft moves, it knocks the camera a place you mightn't necessarily want it to go, but as long as you're still on the set, that looks real, because that's what would happen too. So it brings a realness with it that for some people, I think it's hard to, even with the best operators in the world, it's hard to fake that realness. There's some stuff you can do, but sometimes it's worth just do it for real. That fight, which I think works really well, that's one take, about a 2-minute long take, where we didn't use a stunt person. It was Jerry doing everything. Now, physically, to do a 2-minute stunt scene, if you're not been serious training, that's tough. Just physically going. It's tough for him, and it's tough for Eric, the camera operator. But myself and Jean-Francois felt that that scene would be amazing if we could do it as a one-take thing, because you can get tired of just seeing every action scene where the actor's been replaced for the difficult bit or the dangerous bit. That to me was interesting. But Jerry, I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry was a little hesitant at first about that, because it's not a usual thing to get the main star to do the scene. But he saw that it was possible and that it could be really good for the film.
Jerry on set, it's a lot of fun. It's constant, you know, there's moments, most of this movie is very, very serious. It's heavy. and he does that stuff incredibly well. But like they'll say cut, and then a joke comes out, and it like lightens the mood immediately, and the funny one-liner and the funny quip, which is great because it is like it's the subject matter is fairly heavy at times, and so there's a lot of the takes are serious. And then also physically, it's been a tough set because we're out and it's hot outside. It's the heat index is well over 100 most days. It's incredibly humid, and with the exception of these 2 weeks that we're sitting in these rooms here, we're outdoors, and so it's been a rough set. So having Jerry's levity has been good. He takes his work and what he's doing and the level of detail incredibly seriously, and I've worked on other films with actors, but I've never seen anyone at this level of detail, which is great because I think that it bleeds to the rest of the crew or the rest of the cast on the movie, where they follow Jerry's example, and Jerry wants to make sure that when he's flying a plane, as he's someone who's not a pilot, do his hands go here on the yoke, or do they go down here, or whatever? Which button does he push? How would he hold the gun? How would he do this? And it's the ability to keep up with that, because it's like whether we're at hour 1 of the shoot day or hour 12 of the shoot day, he's able to keep that intensity going while keeping the humor going at the same time, which is a balance that I couldn't manage. So it's been pleasant. Yeah, this is a prototypical big screen action movie that I think is going to be a lot of fun for people. It's one of those movies that I think we're making the movie, and from the footage I've seen, it really feels like it. It's one of those movies where you go on a ride, and for 2 hours you kind of forget all the troubles in the world, and you're on this journey with these people that you like. And I think Jerry has carved out this niche where he is great at playing these everyman heroes. And the nice thing in this one is, he's not a special agent. He's not a military guy. He's a commercial jet line pilot who rises to the challenge and becomes a hero. And I think we've created really great villains, really tense situations, and kind of visual spectacles that people haven't seen before, to make it a fun ride. But the most importantly, I think it's gonna be tense, and I think it's gonna be tense because you're into the characters. It's not an action-first movie, although there's a lot of action. It's a movie where the character and the plot, the action supports those, not the other way around.